Hi, I'm back. It's Jen Healy doing a recap of the Date with Destiny day 3. And it is pretty late. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning and they are still going. I was cutting out because I really wanted to keep my commitment to doing these videos and sharing with you. And they have like another 2 hours of process that they're going to do because tonight, day 3, was suicide night, which they told us in the beginning and I completely forgot. And for those that know me, I'm a total sympathetic crier. I'm really empathic and I feel everything so deeply. So I was bawling my eyes out the entire time. And then once I really felt like I got the process, what Tony was describing tonight with values and rules, understanding our beliefs, then I wanted to come back and share with you what I've learned for today. And I'm going to go back to the beginning because I'm recapping, I'm summarizing a 14-hour day in about 15 minutes, which is just kind of hilarious. But I'm going to do the best I can to give you the highlights and the things that were important to me. So of course we covered more than these points, but this is what really stood out as the nuggets. I'm always wanting to collect the most concentrated golden nuggets or inspiration, the aha moments that I got. So I'm going to start with this recipe that Tony uses. He calls it the chemistry of transformation. And he talks about how people really don't make big positive changes in their lives until they go through this certain process. And he talks about the saturation. I call it saturation. So sometimes I make up my own interpretations. He calls it satiation. And I also call it saturation. Once you've been saturated with a situation, with a behavior, with a belief, then we're finally willing to change it and transform it. And then from there has to be the other ingredient is dissatisfaction. We won't actually change something unless we really become dissatisfied with it, when it no longer is working for us. But then there has to be a threshold that is met when we're just no longer willing to withstand or tolerate something. And then there's a moment of insight. And once we have that moment of insight, there's an opening. And if we jump through that opening, then we can really claim our new identity or our true identity. And if we miss that opening, then we have to start the whole process over again and wait until we get saturated and then go through dissatisfaction and then wait for the threshold to be met, that no longer willing to deal with or to tolerate certain behaviors in our lives or certain situations. And then from there, that opening happens, and if we jump through that opening, then we have an opportunity to really dive in and create our true selves. So there is a recipe to some of these things, and I like how he has step-by-step ways of walking people through the process of transformation. And then we went into what is influencing us from a spiritual standpoint, because we all have a center of gravity, and I'm peeking down at my notes to make sure that I cover everything and that it makes sense. And there's something that drives us. And so our spiritual content, or basically our spiritual development, is going to influence our choices and not only mold our beliefs and our values, but then they will create the different behaviors and how we're showing up in the world. So we talk about the levels of consciousness. There's 7 levels that we all go through. And no matter what type of family we're born into or what type of situation, we all go through these different levels of development, from survival up to claiming our power, and then going all the way up to awakening through these different stages. So it's important to take time to figure out, where do we actually land? He calls it, what's our center of gravity, and where do we go under stress, and then where are we aspiring to go, so that way we know who we're dealing with when we're interacting with people. Some people will actually call out the best in us and will rise to the occasion, and then other people, they can actually drop us down to a lower center of gravity based on their consciousness or their development. And we really want to be aware of that. And what situations do we aspire and integrate to a higher level, and when do we disintegrate down to a more stressful point in our lives? And this was really insightful, and we can go into that another time, because what Tony focused on tonight with Suicide Night, and he did use a few people and walk them through a process in a live example. And it was really diving into our values and our rules and how they shape our beliefs and therefore influence our lives in tremendous ways. And a lot of these values, when they go unchecked, unless you've done your inner work, then they are running the show. I call it like driving the car. And their map might be different than your actual desire or your vision for what you want in your life. But then your destination is being affected by your map and who's driving, right? And so if your past is driving you, and maybe it's your experiences of being hurt or your inner child that still feels wounded or broken, and they're in the driver's seat, then your destination is going to be way different than your highest and biggest dreams and visions that you have for yourself. So we want to identify who's driving the car, what's the map, and then that will determine your destination. And that is a really profound insight that I saw a live example of what was driving some people and why they weren't actually getting to the destination that they said was the most important and significant things in their lives. And that can lead to not only frustration and feelings of failure and defeat, but it could actually be life-threatening for some people. People want to give up and not be here anymore, which is just so touching to me. So I'm going to try not to cry anymore because I really feel completely wrung out. But there was some really profound, intimate situations that Tony walked people through. And he says, knock on wood, that in 41 years of all of his training and coaching, he's never lost one person to suicide that has gone through his program with him. And he really goes there. I mean, I've never experienced someone with so much potent energy, so much power, so much conviction, and so much determination while working with someone. You know, I do private sessions with my clients, and we'll get into it. I mean, we'll go there for like an hour, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours. And it's digging, you know, we have to get through all the layers, all the resistance, all the blockages. And for most people, that's like too much. So these brave souls that show up to these conferences and really go for it for 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, I just, hats off to them. I'm just so impressed by the spirit of the human being, you know, the soul that craves and desires to make their lives better. And even when I was leaving at like 12:30 to drive to my Airbnb, everyone's like, where are you going? I'm like, I'm going to go rest. And I really wanted to save some energy for this video for you. So that was funny. I was like, I'm usually the one that is like the last to leave and just so determined to stay to the very end. But I felt complete because we go through this process of uncovering not only our values, but it's imperative that we understand the order and which ones are a priority for people. Because if you have, he uses the example, if you have somebody's phone number, you have somebody's numbers to their phone, but you don't know the order in which to dial their number, then you're not going to reach that person. So the order matters significantly when we're figuring out people's values, because then we really understand what's driving them. And there's usually some surprise in there that what we think are our values or what we think are our roles could be completely different when we actually do a little digging. So that was really profound. And so our relationship is the vehicle to discovering these different emotions that are basically being driven by the values. And so we want to really get into the feeling place when dropping into our values. And our values, when we're looking at it from a feeling standpoint, there can be values that we move towards and values that we move away from. And this is really big work, and I do share this in my empowerment courses that I offer, understanding our mission, understanding our values, and understanding our vision. The way he does it, which he has, because, you know, Tony has his own little techniques, and the little icing on top is to know the rules that you're creating for your life from your values. And this was key. So basically identifying the top 10 values, and they could be love, peace, joy, happiness, success, determination, safety. It can be comfort. You know, our value system are really driving us, and it's really important to be honest when we're discovering what is it for us personally. Because some people value success and other people value freedom. Maybe it's both and they're in conflict. So we also want to determine what values are there, what beliefs are driving them, and if there's any in conflict, that we start to shift those, because we can consciously change and choose our values and change and choose the beliefs that have been running the show. And this is really key to the whole thing about changing our lives and transforming our lives and choosing a better story. Because our story and what we're telling ourselves, not only the judgments we're telling ourselves, but the questions we're asking ourselves every day, is so significant for the quality of life we're going to have. And I talked about that a little bit yesterday in day 2. So now we're taking it to the next level, going a little bit deeper into the process, because each day builds on itself. And so there's values that we move towards, like the good ones. We could call them love, peace, joy, happiness, success. And then there are the ones we move away from or we avoid, like failure or rejection or depression or worry or sadness. And the list goes on and on. So we want to identify the ones that are really top for us, and then the rules that we associate with them. And like for me, joy is really, really high on my value system. I mean, I've created an entire course that's called the Joy Experience, and the importance of play, and why I create all these embodiment practices and movement practice that are all centered around play and embodiment and increasing our fun factor and up-leveling our joy. So that's obviously really high for me. And then I use the word empowerment a lot and inspiration a lot. These are all pointing to my values. And then we have rules around this. So if it has to be perfect, for example, if everything has to be perfect for you to experience or for me to experience happiness or joy, then we're setting ourselves up for failure. And if failure is one of the avoided values that we are constantly, that's top on our list, that we're constantly moving away from, then you can see this conflict between wanting as much joy and having as much fun as possible, but that can only happen when everything is perfect, and therefore we're avoiding failure, and then so we never really go for it because we're feeling stuck. So that's just one example, and he goes deep, deep, deep into this process with these people who were so courageous to stand up and admit that they are seriously suicidal at the moment. I mean, they obviously came to Date with Destiny, so they got themselves here. But I recently just lost a very dear friend, Wendy Faith, and a few other people this year to suicide. And the first woman who stood up was Wendy, and I just like completely lost it. But the good news is I really feel confident that this Wendy who was at the Date with Destiny is going to stick around. And what I was feeling so deeply is I wish as a community and as a friend circle, because there is a huge community that I am surrounded by, that we could all bond together and come together and do this deep work so we don't have to lose any more lives, that none of our friends have to feel like they're taking this journey alone, and we are really all up-leveling together. Which is why I'm so passionate about sharing these experiences with you, sharing these videos with you, and just sending you a couple little nuggets each day. So I will be back tomorrow, no matter what time it is. I am going to keep my commitment to recording these videos and posting them either on Instagram, Facebook, or YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. You can find out more about my courses and programs and practice at Zen Healing, ZenHealyng.com, or transformationaltraining.online for some of the courses. I'll see you tomorrow.